electrified. Flash was also attacked, lost part of its ear. It's just healing. Maybe a year old, Flash is. Flash is so scared. Whoever's watching out there, everyone on social media, share this image. This poor dog is so scared. Flash is up for adoption. It's an adoptee, she's shaking. It's okay, Flash. Okay, it's okay, it's okay. Stand up. Flash, we're gonna get you adopted. Please contact No Dogs Left Behind. For Flash, I need a brave adopter. My God, Flash lost part of his ear. So scared. It's been through enough, man. Let's get Flash a home. Rescued by brave activists and No Dogs Left Behind. I'm calling out on everyone out there to help us find Flash a home. Oh, come on, Flash. Don't be scared. Come on, Flash.
Today's episode is part of the Stop Yulin Podcast adoption series. With me is Laura Thierry, who made the decision to adopt a survivor of the China dog meat trade in the spring of this year. This at the very height of the COVID-19 global pandemic. Regardless, she chose to go ahead and adopt Flash, a corgi rescued from the dog meat trade in China by the team at No Dogs Left Behind. So Laura was kind enough to take her time during this busy holiday season and walk us through her experience of adopting a dog meat trade survivor in the midst of this global pandemic. And I'm sure all the stress and anxiety she must have felt with the consequential flight delays and not knowing when she would ever get to see her dog. Luckily, No Dogs Left Behind was finally able to secure some flights out of China for the 80-plus survivors who were adopted by loving families in the U.S. and in Canada. On November 27th, 2020, JFK Airport is when these dogs finally landed on U.S. soil to start their new lives with their new adoptive families. It was a very emotional scene at the airport with all of the families finally getting to meet their survivor and giving them a welcome kiss and hug for the very first time. So welcome to the show, Laura. I'm so glad that you accepted my invitation.
Thank you for having me.
Well, the pleasure is mine, really, because adoption is such an important aspect of, this cause that is the dog-cat meat trade. It's an important part of the solution. And so I'm so glad we're going to get to share with viewers your recent experience adopting a dog meat trade survivor while you're going through the devastating effects of the global pandemic. And I do hope it will inspire others to consider adopting a survivor of this cruel, inhumane trade. It is by far one of the best ways you can help the cause, and certainly a life-changing experience that is both enriching for the adopter and the adoptee. So I always like to ask my guests an important question, and it's important to me because I found out about this cause much later on, and I know many learned about it like in 2014, 2015. So I'm curious, when and how did you first hear about the dog-cat meat trade?
So I first learned about it when I returned to school several years ago. I went back to grad school and I pursued a degree from the University of London in biodiversity conservation. And it's an interdisciplinary program that deals with environmental law and genetics, wildlife preservation, as well as the developing world and how people use the resources that they have. And many of them exploit the resources, and education to assist them with learning some new practices was one of the focuses. Wildlife was one of the focuses, but also domesticated animals, and factory farming was a big focus as well. Right. They touched upon the dog meat trade a bit, but very little. Mm-hmm. So after I graduated, that topic intrigued me enough to start pursuing more research on my own. And
I'm sorry to interrupt, but what year was that about? Like in what year?
That was Let's see. Well, I graduated about 4 years ago, and I was pursuing some work that was related to that degree, and still am. And so that kind of took me away from the dog meat issue. But it was always in the back of my mind. I was horrified by some of the things that I did learn. So I revisited the issue a couple of years ago, and I started researching it online, started looking things up to understand what was going on in Asia, in all the various countries. And then I learned about Yulin and the atrocities, and saw videos and gained more understanding about just the entire process of what these dogs go through. And then I began researching the various organizations that are addressing the problem and what they're doing to address the problem.
And so that was 2 years ago. So about like me, because I first heard about it end of 2017, I would say. And so we're about at the same place. And I heard about it first through Yulin Dog Meat Festival. Like you, I saw, I researched the name on the internet, and saw the horrible images and videos, and it touched me very, very much. It was very hard to understand how this could be happening. It's very brutal. It was the violence, that really disturbed me.
It was the worst of the worst. I mean, I'm very aware of factory farming and the atrocities that go on in that, in that world.
Industry, yeah.
But the by far I found to be if not the worst thing on this planet, very close to it.
I mean, it's hard to imagine worse, and I agree with you on that front, because I learned about factory farming actually about the same time, because honestly I've been vegan for most of my life. But I never was an activist. I became vegan because I saw 5 minutes of slaughterhouse footage, and that really changed me overnight. Like, I couldn't...
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah, that'll do it, exactly. But it never made me an activist. I mean, we're talking about like 33 years ago. There was no such thing as vegan, and certainly not in my hometown. So I just stopped eating meat and dairy, and that was my decision. But I never was an animal activist until I heard about Yulin. And so then I started looking and seeing footage of factory farms, and it's just horrific. But like you said, dog cat meat trade is what distinguishes it for me and for many that are fighting it, is the brute violence, the torture aspect that is inherently part of it.
But torture.
Yeah, and we're like, well, how could it get worse? I mean, it can't get much worse than that, and especially during Yulin Festival with the it's kind of a entertainment sport, the way they torture these dogs in front of the public, and people are cheering them on, and I thought, this is unbelievable. Like, this is so appalling.
Ugly. Yeah, it's gut-wrenching. There's no other, it's just gut-wrenching. It brought me many, many sleepless nights, and it still does.
I'm glad to hear I'm not the only one, because I was so affected by it that I had sleepless nights, and I had to censor myself. Like, I stopped watching the videos. I had to stop watching the very graphic images, because it's so painful, and I feel like it's gonna affect me in a way that I won't be as effective for the cause. I won't be a good advocate for the cause, because I'm going to be so drowning in my tears, and that's not the way to help, really, at the end of the day. Once you've seen the images, it's motivated you, I think you need to move on from that and just take action, more concrete actions that can help. So I think we're on the same page for that. That explains how, I guess my other question for you was, were you always an animal lover growing up? Like, did you grow up with a pet, for example, or?
I think I was born an animal lover. I was born into a household with several dogs. We always had we had English setters and Labrador retrievers. And so that was I mean, my fondest memories are, being with those dogs. And I just grabbed matter. I could be, at a social event as a kid or in the neighborhood or, walking home from school. And if there was a dog anywhere, that's all I cared about.
Yeah.
And so, and then I also brought home strays constantly. My poor mother had to
Yeah.
for all of that. But my parents were my father trained dogs, and he was very, very kind, and I learned from him. He was a great role model to teach me, how to train a dog. They were part of the family. They were outside, but they were indoor dogs.
Yeah.
They were always in with us and part of the family. Well, speaking about, growing up with animals, I was always introduced to a variety of experiences. My father was very involved with training dogs, and my parents were both very involved in natural resources. My father had a love affair with birds. It was just species after species we dealt with them, and particularly with wildlife. And, I remember one time my mother, who preferred to ride her bike rather than drive a car, she went to the grocery store in her bike or with her bike. And on her way back from the store, she stopped in the middle of an extremely busy road and picked up a large box turtle that was crossing the road, and put it in her grocery bag and literally brought it home. And then we found a place for it, through a like a wildlife rescue facility with wetlands and whatever. So these were like little examples that I just grew up with, teaching me, how to respect nature, and that it's not, it might just be a turtle to somebody who doesn't care, but to my family, those things mattered. So
They're living beings, and it's kind of our duty to protect them. And so that was great that it was instilled in you at such a young age. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it was, and it's carried with me throughout my life. So that was a great contribution my parents, gave me.
Wow, that's great. Fantastic. So I guess we're going to move on to the famous adoption. And I just have to ask you, because we've spoken, and I know that you adopted, his name was Flash. He was baptized Flash by the team at No Dogs Left Behind. But for viewers at home, his name is now Jasper, and it's a beautiful name. And I think he's with you at the moment. I don't know if we can take a sneak peek, or are you able to bring him to you?
If you don't mind waiting 1 second, I'll grab him. He's right here.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I don't mind waiting at all.
Okay.
Little Jasper.
So, here.
Oh my God. Oh, he's such a face. I love that face. It's $1 million face. Like that face, I'll do it. No wonder you fell in love with him.
He's very quiet. He's very loving.
Oh.
Say hi.
Hi, Jasper. You're such a sweetie. He seems
We do
calm.
kind of laugh behind his back and call him Potato. He is a bit too chubby. But
you told me that because they named him Flash, and you were like, that's not an appropriate name. He's like more like a couch potato.
Yeah, he is.
Oh my God. And I can see that he looks calm, and like he doesn't look too taken aback from his experiences. But how long was he at the shelter in China? How long before he adopted?
That's a question. I don't know the absolute answer to that. I believe it was probably about 3 months or so. When he first arrived there, his picture was on their post on their adoption page, and he weighed at that time 15 pounds, which is extremely light for a corgi.
Wow.
So he's gained a lot since
They
then.
took good care of him, I guess, you know.
Yeah, he likes to eat.
And so you
Yeah.
saw him first on the No Dogs Left Behind website? Is that what you're saying?
I did. I was actually looking for a corgi to rescue, and he'll probably sit here the whole time. I don't know.
Oh, if he can, that would be great. You know what? I wish I could have a co-host, which would be my cats, but you know, they're not into it. And I think Jasper would make a great co-host. If
Yeah,
only he lived closer to me.
come on, look over.
So beautiful.
I'm sorry, I forgot your question. You were
Okay,
asking
so you
about.
first saw him on the No Dogs Left Behind website because you were looking to adopt a corgi. Is that it?
I was, and I was actually looking. I was studying the dog meat trade and researching some organizations online. But I was also at the same time looking to find a corgi I could rescue in the States, and that just came up. No,
Empty, eh?
very unsuccessful.
Yeah.
And I did not expect to see a corgi on the NDLB site, but I thought, since I'm so interested in this issue and I'm learning more that adoption is available through No Dogs Left Behind, let me just look. And I just impulsively looked on their site, saw his picture, and I was shocked that they even had a corgi, and they had a few of them actually.
Yeah.
So I just said that's it. I wanted to see a video of him. They shared a video.
Wow.
He was extremely shy, very passive, was hiding behind everyone. He would pancake, which is something that dogs do when they're in a defensive mode. They kind of flatten out on the floor, and they want to be invisible.
Yeah.
So he did a lot of that, but as time wore on, the videos I saw of him showed that he was kind of coming out of his shell and
getting
becoming
more comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you know what his story is? Like, you say he was adopted like 3 months before you made the application, so that would be at the end of 2019, I guess, is when they rescued him. And from what circumstances?
He did not face all the horrors of the Yulin Festival. He did face, he wasn't one of those dogs who was crammed into those tiny cages with several other dogs, and he may have been at some point, but he wasn't on his way at that point to the dog meat festival, like last year or 2019 Yulin. He instead was, to my understanding, rescued or confiscated from an illegal dog meat, an illegal breeding facility.
Oh.
And the breeding facilities are largely, they're producing dogs for sale for owners who want a pet, but the circumstances, are not, they're far from ideal. There's, if you pictured a dog who was with a group of other dogs in cages with no proper flooring and just
it's kind of a puppy mill situation type of thing?
A puppy mill situation. I saw videos. They were very dark, cement warehouses. The dogs were either in the cages or they were running around, just mixed with each other, all different breeds. No government regulations, no advocacy groups, being able to oversee it. And my understanding was there was not enough proper paperwork to demonstrate that it was a legitimate facility, so he was confiscated.
Wow. And with many other dogs, I'm imagining, they were able to rescue them, right?
Yes, and they also, the dogs that become so-called useless to them after a while are then fattened up and sent to the meat festival or sent to the meat market. Slaughterhouse. So he was destined for that had he not been rescued when he was.
My God.
So
that would be a crime. That would be a crime. Well, it is a crime, and it happens too often. And like you mentioned, there's no such thing as animal welfare laws in China, so dogs are pretty much considered objects, property.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I can imagine that those breeding facilities are nothing more than like puppy mills and just very filled with abuse, and it's
Yeah,
horrible.
there's a lot of neglect and it's very unsanitary and there's no proper care.
He's come a long way though. Now at this point, he's in
Yes.
your lap and look at that face. He looks like
Yeah.
he knows he's been rescued.
The ears are coming down, but normally they're up.
Oh yes,
He
because a
was
happy dog usually the ears are up, like a cat, I guess.
Well, Corgi's ears, my other Corgi has, it looks completely different compared to Jasper, but he has much larger ears, but they're always very erect. A Corgi typically
Yeah.
has that. This guy did have a portion of his left ear, at one point before he was rescued, was chewed off by another dog. So he's had a few
He's
encounters
sustained
with,
some injuries from his
yeah,
time. Yeah. And
yeah.
so what part of China was he in when they rescued him?
I don't know the exact location. He did go to the Dai rescue,
Yeah, so
which is
that's what I was wondering. Yeah, they
yeah.
have three sanctuaries that they call. So one in Beijing. I think they were kind of forced to evacuate during
Yes.
COVID, but I think
Yeah.
now they still have it. I'm not sure what's going on with
I
that.
Well, my understanding about the Beijing setting was that the government, right in the heart of all this COVID drama, had announced to them that they were going to be using the property for something else, for
Okay.
developing
Yeah.
something. They're not, I don't know the circumstances, but it forced them to look to close that facility down. And so
Uh,
they needed to expand both Ganji and Dai,
yeah.
um, expand the facilities to accommodate all the dogs that were coming from Beijing.
Yes, and I remember seeing a lot of posts when they had to transport all the dogs from Beijing to Dai or Gongji, one of their other locations, and it's
Yeah,
quite far. Like the distance is not that close, so it was quite the undertaking.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was undertaking. Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
but they were successful at it. So, and that's one of the things that I very much admire NDLB with doing is that they're very dedicated and it just was part of their plan and they did it and they pulled it off successfully.
Yes, I think they've become very good at, first of all, the rescue, the emergency response. I mean, they've done amazing work because I think one of their most iconic rescue was that truck in 2017 heading to Yulin. It was intercepted, and a lot of the dogs were dying left and right because they had sustained so many injuries. They were sick. The disease you can imagine that spreads in those circumstances with the heat, the sweltering heat, no food, no water. They're all squished together so that the disease spreads like wildfire. And so they, No Dogs Left Behind, quickly set up quarantine protocol and they did amazing work. So I think that's one of their strengths, actually. And also, you're right. I think they are so dedicated to the dogs that they have rescued. A lot of these dogs have been at in their care in China for many years, and they are good about instilling a routine with the dogs and taking them for walks in the morning, feeding times and all that, making sure the dog is socialized properly so that he becomes, when a family decides to adopt them, they're already more acclimated to human touch, they're more socialized and the transition is that much easier. And I
Yeah.
think you can testify to that because it looks like Jasper, when you picked him up, did you pick him up at the airport on November 27th? Or?
I was unfortunately not at the airport. I had, this great dream of doing that when I first adopted him. But That was in, late March of 2020.
Yeah.
And right on the heels of COVID just starting to really take a hold. So the flights were delayed, and we moved into, from April to May to June, and then October. And I'm very grateful for someone who is from Chicago. His name is Rick. He was part of the whole, he's one of the adopters. He also adopted a corgi named Nettie. And he and his partner, Nick, drove all the way to JFK and very graciously picked up Jasper for me, as well as another dog that someone in Michigan had adopted. Wow. And I will say, though, that in spite of my desire to be at JFK, and, back in maybe a year ago, it would have been one of those great celebrations where everyone's together. COVID prevented that from happening. So one of the fellow adopters who lives in Chicago was very gracious to go to JFK and not only pick up the dog he adopted, but also to pick up mine. And so while he was doing this, I was able to watch the live video. So while he was at JFK, he was keeping me informed, texting me, showing pictures. The live video was showing the dogs coming out of the cargo area after they had gone through customs. They did a phenomenal job with protecting everyone against COVID, because the windshields of each car were marked with the names of the dogs that were adopted by that car, the driver. And then once the dog was ready, the crate was carried out to the car and the dog was introduced to the adopter. So he did that for me, and I was able to see it as if I was there. So it was very heartwarming.
That is amazing. And it's a neighbor of yours. Is that it? Or?
No, it's not. We've become friends, but he's not a neighbor. I don't live in Chicago. I live in Michigan.
Yes. Okay. So he was able to make the trip for you. And how did you hear about him? Through No Dogs Left Behind adopter support group? Yeah.
They did.
That's great.
He was very instrumental at helping with that. And she connected me to him. His name is Rick, and a great, very gracious, lovely gentleman, and his partner both went together. And they kind of made an adventure about, the whole process. Spent the night on the way there and on the way back, and so it really saved a lot of driving and a lot of heartache for me, because I had a lot of things going on and numerous other animals to deal with at home. So
and it makes sense, like at the end of the day, like if you don't need to have 4 cars heading in the same direction, then might as well save that. It's better for everyone, for the environment, certainly. So that's awesome. It was a good experience overall, and I have to ask you a burning question on maybe not just my mind. What made you decide to go through with this adoption at the height of COVID-19? Like, most people would probably have chosen to delay the adoption, but your heart was in it, I guess,
I think it was the timing. I wasn't aware that COVID was going to be as extreme as it became.
Yeah.
And so in March, we knew COVID was a problem, but it was not known at that time how severe and how problematic things were going to become.
Yeah.
And I had committed to this dog. I had put in the adoption paperwork. I had seen his videos, and it was just no turning back. So when the delays took place, rather than say, no, I've changed my mind, which some people did, and, no fault to them. I understand why people, may have done that. But I was just, I just thought, no, it's fine. I'm just going to wait. I waited it out.
You were committed. Yeah, I'd made a decision. You're going to stick to it. And this beautiful corgi, you already fell in love with him, I'm sure.
Yeah, like I can't abandon him now.
No.
So,
I think I would have done the same. And like you said, we had no idea how long it was going to be. I was sent home from my office mid-March, and I thought it was going to be for a month. A lot of people thought it was just temporary, but it turns out it's going to last a little bit longer.
Yeah. Yeah, quite a bit longer. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say that one of the things that helped us out, all of us adopters, was that the support site on Facebook that No Dogs Left Behind has allowed us to connect with one another and provide questions or complaints, or we expressed our frustration and our worry, and you'd see a video of your dog and then you'd share it with other people.
Yeah.
Or you'd cry and complain about how you were just waiting, and you were anxious and excited at the same time, but the waiting did become difficult. There were times where I just had to put it out of my mind because
Must.
it seemed like forever.
Yeah.
So but it did arrive, and I had faith it would. So yeah.
Well, you stuck it through and you were rewarded with this beautiful dog, Jasper. And so that's amazing. But of course, like anyone, you get discouraged and you must lose a little bit of faith. And you're like wondering, did I make a huge mistake by, like doing this? And No Dogs Left Behind, I am not sure. When you first heard about Yulin, I mean, was that part of the organization you first discovered were working on the trade, or?
No, I started researching the dog and cat meat trade, and I learned about Yulin, but it wasn't after I started, learning more and more about that I decided, well, my next step is I want to see who's making a difference. What can be done? As one person sitting home in our comfortable houses, you want to go there, you want to be on the front lines and do what you can, and that was impossible. So I wanted to see who was making a difference. And they were the first organization that I discovered and, researched. And I gained a lot of information about them by connecting with other organizations in the States that knew of them and had been affiliated with them, with maybe fostering some dogs for them, or were connected to Jeff in some way. And, Jeff being the founder of the group, I wanted to learn more about him. And I was convinced after reading about them that this was the best organization for me to pursue, involvement with. So I started donating and reading more and connecting with them. And, that was all right on the heels of when I had adopted Jasper.
Well, I have to applaud you because a lot of people that, learn about this cause and, they feel like powerless. And I understand that, we're over here and they're, it's happening all the way over there in China, a country that's got a lot of issues, including human rights issues. But I think you're absolutely right. There are many ways we can help. And certainly, like you said, we can't be there on the front lines. It's, we have a job, like I have a full-time job. I can't just fly there. So why not support the ones that are doing the hard work and the hard work that we cannot do? And you do your research, you find out an organization that you feel, confident that is doing legitimate good work, and you support them. And donations is huge. I mean, they cannot carry out this work if they don't have donations. I mean, that's the way a nonprofit is run. It's not like they don't get any other type of funding. So it's super important. And you went a step further and adopted a survivor, which is also another great way you can help, And so I always stress that on my podcast, ways you can help. Volunteer. It doesn't have to be volunteering over there, because I recently had a podcast with Bob Swenson, who actually did go to Korea, South Korea, and he went to Thailand, but you don't need to go that far. You can volunteer from here. I volunteer for Humane Society International in Canada. I help them when they have dogs rescued from the meat trade in South Korea. There are other, plenty of ways you can help. You can also share and educate your network, your family, friends,
Yeah, that's the message I try to provide when I see postings that are, they're simply postings of these horrors that, for me to even describe right now is probably not appropriate, but we know what they do to the dogs. And I would witness those, and then I would see comments coming from people on the Facebook page, and they were just, comments insulting the nation of China, or insulting, the whatever, and saying horrific things, which I understand. I felt the anger, I felt the intense sadness, but I was also compelled to write back and say, this is doing no good unless, the dog doesn't know you're crying, and the dog doesn't know that you want to help him. So you need to do something. It's either contact the government with your addresses and emails that you have, donate, adopt, just join an organization so that you can be a part of the cause. And I know it seems very minor, and oftentimes when I'm signing petitions, I feel very
ineffective.
Useless. I feel very ineffective. Yes.
Yeah, I know.
But it's like, what can we do? But I'm just hoping and hoping that more and more power comes about with making these changes.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. Sharing posts is one thing, but if they're graphic videos and images, I try to shy away from that, because it's just shock value. I mean, it's there for shock value. And at one point, we've all seen them. We've seen so much animal cruelty. There's enough pain and suffering in the world. Let's rise above that and take it a step further and actually be part of the solution. And part of the solution is not insulting China and calling them God knows what name. I understand that too. You feel the anger, you feel revolted, you feel like this is horrible. But you can't stay there. You can't stay in the anger. You got to rise above it and move forward. And you're certainly a good example of that. So I commend you. So
there are people that also, the group of people that the recent adopters from the 27th of November flight, they're all a part of this too. And we've actually, some of us have become friends over this. Absolutely. So that networking then hopefully spreads further and further to more and more family and friends. And, and I just have confidence and hope that the younger generations in Asia will become more effective, because there is some outrage on their part as well.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a fact that in China, dog meat consumption is not that common. I mean, it is about 20% of the population that consumes dogs on a regular basis. Some people might partake in it occasionally, but it's not like everyone in China is eating dogs and cats, and many animal lovers in China. And we have proof, because there are many activists that are getting involved. And so that is very encouraging. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm curious, though, you took this on yourself, but what about your family? Are they now embracing the cause as well, or are you doing this independently?
Well, I started doing it independently, but I have a partner who was raised with no animals whatsoever. And when he and I first began our relationship, I would hear him say things about, I love dogs, I love cats. But he had no understanding whatsoever about not only the joy, but the pain that you go through with animals, and all the responsibilities, and just the dog hair, it's constant vacuuming and it's constant cleaning. And those were inconveniences that he had to learn to accept and
overcome.
Overcome. In fact, I have 2 rescued cats, and the first cat I rescued was not a problem for him, but the second cat I rescued became a problem, because he has an allergy to that cat. Oh. And when he first learned about that, there were discussions, and I remember him saying things to me like, well, I don't know what we're going to do about this. And I just remember saying, I'm doing nothing.
It's me or the cat. No, well, it's the cat. The cat.
The cat is not. I said, I'll bathe the cat for you. We'll try some different techniques. We'll try to keep him away from you when you're here. But that cat is staying. And immediately he said, Oh, I absolutely understand that. There's no negotiation on that. When I
Okay.
told him about he's been very familiar and has helped me quite a bit with some of the other corgis that I've had throughout our relationship. I rescued one many years ago who passed away several years ago, and then I obtained another one who has really helped Jasper. But in each time I'm getting a dog, it's like, okay,
He
when I
goes
told
with
him,
it.
yeah, he goes with it. And in fact, he kept, Edward is the other corgi that I have, and he kept Edward. We didn't want to mix both dogs immediately right away. So
Yeah.
he kept, Eddie for a while, which he often does. But every time Eddie leaves his home and returns to my home, he has separation anxiety. And I'm talking about my partner, not Eddie. Eddie's fine,
Oh,
whatever, but
he's got separation anxiety.
so
So
he's very sad, and he's like, I need him back. I miss him. So we kind of take turns,
that's
at both
hilarious.
houses. And he was very supportive with Jasper. I did, however, get very tempted a couple of times to adopt another dog. And I remember him saying at first, well, how many is enough?
Yeah.
And I said, I have no idea, and he just kind of threw up his hands and said, well, we'll just take it one day at a time. So he's fine.
Wow. So you got a
Yeah.
great partner, at least, and he's come a long way. Like from not having any kind of understanding what it's like to share your life with a pet to now having separation anxiety every time
Yeah.
he misses
Yeah.
Edward or Eddie. So
Yeah.
that's fantastic. I
Yeah.
myself, my husband. We've been together for 16 years, and he loves animals. Like he's the reason why we've got our first cat in 2011. But whenever I talk about like adopting a dog meat trade survivor, then he's like, oh, no, 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 we're not doing that. Like, are you kidding me? He wants a German Shepherd dog, but he wants a puppy that he can raise and kind of mold into, the perfect
Sure.
dog. And I'm like, I'm the opposite. Like, I would go to the SPCA and say, give me the dog that no one wants. The dog that's missing a leg, the dog that's senior, that's never going to be adopted. Like, that's my heart. I guess I have a big heart for animals. And he does too, but I guess in his own way. But, with my recent discussions on adoptions, I think it's become very clear that every member of the family has to be on board. You can't just make a decision like that and say, oh, hopefully he'll go along with it.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
super important. But I'm convinced I'll change his mind. I'll get him around.
You never know. I have one of the current corgi that I have, the one that, was here before Jasper came. He was not a rescue, and he did come as a puppy. And you never know what you're going to get, because he is the most, he has his issues. He's a loving, amazing corgi, but he's very different from the rescued corgi I had before him. And you never know what you're going to get. I mean, he is so energized that he's nonstop. He's ready for agility class. I mean, he would blow them away in agility classes.
Wow.
And he came with his quirks, in spite of the fact that he was raised by me.
Yeah.
He was easily trainable, and he's very smart. But they all have their own little. And the thing about the German Shepherds in China is, as I understand it through Jeff, is that they're considered illegal there.
Yeah.
So once any German Shepherd that's found who's not in an actual service position is destroyed. So
it's very true what you're saying, because I had Jeff on the podcast, and he said a dog in urban areas. I don't know about like the countryside. I think you're allowed to have more like a guard dog that's bigger. But in urban cities, definitely you're limited to have a dog that's 34 centimeters high. I mean, that's very small. So it eliminates golden retrievers, pretty much every dog breed there is, like poodles are okay, and he was like, It does not make sense. A golden retriever is the most docile breed of dog that you could ever have. When a poodle, he's been attacked by a poodle. So like it has nothing to do with size. But I think it's a question of education, of course. That's part of it, because I think China's pet industry is very young. It's very young still. It's only been 10 years that people are allowed to have a pet. And so I think it's the fear. A lot of people, they see a big dog and they're afraid, like they don't understand it. It's not part of their environment. It was never part of their upbringing. And so I think it's the fear aspect. A big dog could hurt me, so. So
intimidating if you don't understand them.
It's going to take some doing and some time still in China for the mentalities to change and to progress. But certainly, I guess you're giving me hope that there's probably a German Shepherd in there for me one day.
There may be. Maybe you can convince your husband.
I've seen
I'm sure Jeff would try to convince him.
I know he would. I mean, he told me, listen, you tell me, give me the word, and we'll find you your dog. So I'm looking forward to that as well. And so I think we've touched upon it, but you're saying that the post-adoption support that you've gotten from No Dogs Left Behind is pretty good. You have that group on Facebook. But can you tell us a little bit, when you first applied, you apply online, and what happens after that? Like, what's the communication like at that point?
Well, it's pretty straightforward. If you see a dog online on their adoption site that you're interested in, you simply fill out an adoption form, which is very complete. They want to know, they want to know details because they're very concerned. And that was one of the things that gave me more confidence about them, because they're not a program that's simply going to just, okay, you want a dog, here you go. They do screen you, but it's very reasonable, and I was very happy to do it. Once I filled that out, I submitted it and began corresponding with Brandy, who is the staff person who handles adoptions. And we discussed Flash, now known as Jasper, and I had several questions. I was apprehensive with some things, and she did her best, along with a couple of other staff people, to answer questions for me. And so the correspondence continued throughout the process. And some of them were group correspondences to everyone, showing, an update about the flight status. But there were delays. I became very frustrated at one point because the emails that I would send out were not immediately responded to. And I had to remind myself quite a bit that they were dealing with a very new situation, a new circumstance with these flights with COVID, and how to tackle the transport issue. And I'm sure they were being inundated with, emails from all of us. So as frustrating as it was, I know that they did their best, and all my questions were answered ultimately. And there was nothing left unclear. So it was, and then when the time came closer to the flight, they connected all of us, all those whose dogs were on that particular flight. We were all connected on a WhatsApp site. So everyone could correspond to each other, and all the directives and the specifics about the flight time, the location, where to pick them up, what group your dog was in. They were all organized very well because they had volunteers assigned to each group of dogs. And we were all able to correspond and see that. So there were a myriad of ways to communicate, whether it was by text or email or on the chat, the WhatsApp chat.
I have to say, like, just seeing the video of that airport footage, you can see it's an undertaking to fly over 80 dogs and to try to coordinate everything with the adopters, the airport transport. I think Jeff, I don't know if it was the same day, but he had to go to Canada because they sent him a minivan for the 9 dogs that were heading to Canada, and it was not sufficiently big. It could not accommodate 9 crates with dogs in them. It's a lot of respect goes out to that team, because I can
Yeah.
imagine it was hours and hours and hours of planning, orchestrating. It's no small feat, to do what
It was
they
a huge
did.
endeavor. And to think that it was just, it wasn't just one time,
No,
I mean, he immediately returned to the next day when another flight was coming in,
I
and
know.
no time to rest. So, and
I
now they're flying him in
know.
next.
I have a lot of
So,
respect for that because I don't know how they do it. I mean, Jeff, when I spoke to him, we had the podcast on January 1st of
I
2020
listened
on
to
New
your
Year's
podcast.
Day. It was the only time he was available, and he was going to fly out to China in a few hours. And he was constantly back and forth, back and forth. I mean, I can imagine with the jet lag and all. But
Yeah,
he's very dedicated, and so
yeah.
I admire him a lot for that. So I want to now focus on your first moments of welcoming Jasper home, and how did that go? Like, obviously, you had your friend Rick bring you the dog. What day was it? Like, was it Saturday by then, or?
It was Saturday by then, and we met at an agreed upon location that was about an hour away from my home, and it
Okay,
was en route for him going back to Chicago.
right.
So it was we literally met in a parking lot at at a hotel, and we just all three cars that were involved got together, and we had been on the phone and corresponding all day, and I just got out, walked up to the car, out came the crate, out came Jasper, he handed him to me, and then Jasper immediately wanted to lay down on the pavement and just flatten out. He was
Oh
just
yeah, he was
terrified.
tired. Yeah.
He was tired, yeah, jet lag and all the
Oh
commotion.
yeah.
But yeah, it was a 13-hour time difference, so he had to face, he was upside down in terms of sleeping and
Yeah.
eating. But I put him in the crate. He came home, not a problem. He has been far easier than I anticipated.
Yeah.
People, my friends and neighbors who have all been very supportive of me. I have to say a shout out to my friend Sue and my friends Joan and Kristen and my friend Brian. They were all very, very supportive of me. And, one of them actually asked me at one point, am I scared? And
Yeah.
the thought had never occurred to me.
Yeah.
But, then I started considering it and I thought, well, yeah, maybe I should be. But no, he came home. I brought him in the house. He immediately started to explore the house. He did that kind of pancake behavior where he kind of flattened down and look up at me like, what are you going to do to me? But
Oh.
it took 2 days. And he
Wow.
was, enjoying his bed and enjoying his little blanket on his bed. And, we were practicing. He needed to be housebroken, so we were practicing that.
Yeah.
And is now good with that.
Wow.
But downstairs, he never had encountered stairs, so that was an issue.
Wow.
But then when he was introduced to the other dog really kind of took over as a big brother and really showed him the ropes.
Wow.
So they were playing right away, and Jasper was able to go up the steps within about maybe 5 days.
With the help of Eddie? Is that?
No, with just the help of me. Eddie wasn't there, wasn't at the house.
Okay, yeah, right.
But going down the stairs, he was terrified. And then, there was one moment where the two of them had been playing in the house. They were all very excited. They wanted to just run outside. And Jasper just spontaneously, without thinking about it, just ran down the steps. And he's been fine ever since.
Oh
So
my God.
those were things I couldn't have taught him. The other dog taught him that.
Oh,
So
that's awesome. And it's
it,
true, we don't think of stuff like that, like stairs, like I know my own
yeah,
cats, it took them not much time to get accustomed to stairs. Like cats, depending, I think there's like two categories of cats. There's the tree dweller or the bush dweller. So bush dwellers, they prefer to be low on the ground and kind of spy in a bush, where the tree dweller prefers to be high. And so I
yeah,
have both, one of my male cat, who's the oldest, he's definitely a tree dweller. He loves to be high, up high. And my female cat, she's the opposite. She likes to be low, crouched down, and so I guess it's similar. I
Interesting.
mean, it's stairs is something to overcome, but now he's managed, and it's been just a couple of weeks or 2, 3
He
weeks.
is a very, yeah, I was shocked. I thought I was going to have to go through probably several more weeks of a lot of inconvenience on my part, which I was very willing to do.
Yeah, like carrying him up, carrying him down.
Yeah, yeah. But that's not been the case. I think that
Wow.
he's becoming more and more spontaneous and kind to, I think he's recognizing that I'm kind and he's trusting me more
Yeah.
and becoming a little bit more playful with me and a little less of just, looking at me and waiting for me to show him the ropes. He's becoming more assertive. So that's really
More confident, for sure.
yeah.
And how old do you think he is? Like, I know they don't know the accurate age, but do they have an idea?
He was estimated at the time of his rescue to be about a year to a year and a half.
Okay.
So he is at this point a year and a half to 2 years old.
He's still a
And-
baby. Well,
Yeah, he's a youngster. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I had him checked out by the vet in my town once he arrived,
Yeah.
and he agreed with that assessment. So that's pretty much in 2 years.
And the question on everyone's mind, what was the vet visit like? I mean, did they give him a clean bill of health, or were there any
did.
issues?
There were no issues. One of the things that No Dogs Left Behind was very good about doing, and as I said, I think they're very responsible, and they covered from A to Z what they needed to do.
Yeah.
So when the dogs were transported to JFK, everyone who adopted received a bag of not only the dog food that the dogs had been used to being fed, but also some toys and a leash, and that included their crate as well, and all the vet records. So the vet records there showing rabies and distemper and parvo and all of those things had been performed.
Yeah.
So that was good, and to be able to hand over and show that those things had all been done, and he passed through customs without a problem. There were no health issues that I could see, nothing the vet could detect. He did have some blood work taken, and a fecal check and all that, and everything came out fine. So
There you go.
he was yeah.
He's on his way to becoming an old dog. No health problems.
yeah.
And that's a good point, because they can't fly dogs out without, health records, certificates, so all that vaccination had to have happen over there. But it's good to know, because a lot of people, that's what they are afraid of. It's like adopting a dog like that. I mean, not only psychologically, the dog is damaged or traumatized, but it's more the health issues like disease, like they're fearful of that. And I understand. But, like you said before, you can adopt a dog locally, and it doesn't mean that he's going to be perfect health, So,
Certainly. Yeah.
So very encouraging. And so at this point, I think we have an idea that your family is very supportive. I mean, you just did a shout out to your friends that are also, that rallied around you and are supportive of your decision. And can you tell me if any of them are inspired by what you've done and are thinking of doing something similar? Or?
Well, I do have one friend from my barn. I've had some horses. I'm down to one horse at this point in time, but one of my trainers that I've become good friends with is, she recently lost her dog. She had a beautiful, very gentle, rescued pit bull who was amazing. Everyone loved him. And he became sick, and he died a few months ago. So they're pretty heartbroken about it. And when I was explaining to her what was going on with me with the dog rescue, she was very intrigued and expressed that when they're ready to get another dog, they may very well pursue this through No Dogs Left Behind, or perhaps some other organization. I know there's other ones out there, but she and her husband were very interested in it. I've got a couple of other people who are friends of mine that have also expressed some interest. So maybe we'll see.
I mean, that would be awesome, because once you have a survivor with you like that, he becomes an ambassador, and you can share a story with your community. You can educate people in your hometown, and it does world of wonders.
My mailman knows all about it.
There you go. See, he probably never heard of the dog meat trade before you, right? So
no, he was shocked. So
I know.
I think to myself, when it's happening and I'm having a conversation with someone, I think, well, I don't know how far this is going to go. But then I remind myself that, you tell one person and that person might tell one more person, and it might spread further and further. And the more you can educate people about it. One of my friends had no idea when I told her about the dog meat trade. She was utterly shocked.
Wow.
She had no idea that anyone ever ate dog. And I explained to her that I'm not going to condemn people. If I condemn someone for eating a dog, I have to condemn someone for eating, a pig or a cow or a chicken. But what I really stress is, for any animal, but especially the dogs that we're talking about today, I really have to stress the absolute torment that they go through, which is, far worse than some of the worst cases I've seen in factory farming.
Absolutely. That's very well said, because I am vegan. I live in Montreal, and frankly, none of my colleagues knew about the dog meat trade, so I've done a good job at educating them. I got them to sign petitions, because I work at a brokerage firm, and I got my branch manager to sign petitions. I mean, everyone knows about it now, and it's a great way to advocate for the cause, and who knows, maybe you'll enlist some more supporters along the way. But I'm part of a group of vegan activists, and a lot of times I get flack for being so involved with the cause of the dog cat meat trade, because a lot of them, for them it's like, why are you so focused on this when we have animals here that are dying every day? And I understand to a degree, but I think it's a lot of them, and in their case, it's a lot of the ignorance. They don't know the details and the particularities of this trade, and how vicious it is, and just how horrific, honestly. I know farm animals suffer greatly. It's horrible. I can't even watch that footage. But the brute torture, the deliberate torture, I think is really what got to me. And I do feel that this is something that we could probably abolish in my lifetime. I really do believe that. I think like you, whereas I don't think we're gonna have a vegan world in my lifetime. I mean, I'm a certain age. I have maybe 30 more years to live. Probably more than that, but
you have more than that.
Probably more than that, maybe 50 more years. But I feel like we can be, if we can just get this dog cat meat trade abolished, everywhere in the world, because it does happen on a specific part of the world. It's not everywhere. It's really specific to Asia, Asia Pacific, I'll be more precise. And so if we could just eradicate this trade, I think we'd be so much further ahead to instill better animal welfare laws in every country, and to hopefully one day make people see that a dog is a dog, a pig is a pig, and there's really no difference. It's a sentient being, and we do not need to eat them to be healthy. We have no need for that. And once people hear about the horrendous conditions that animals are raised in, I think it's an eye-opener. And naturally, their hearts will expand and include farm animals, like maybe a dog and cat is more like a gateway animal into their hearts and to understanding the sentience of these animals, and that at the end of the day, there's no difference, really. It's just the main difference is what our society has like kind of conditioned us to believe is that a pig is food, a dog is a friend, and that's...
I believe that if you're going to have a get together, I have a vegan friend who will, for his family, will accommodate them when he's having a party.
Oh, yes.
Or so he doesn't go all out. He's not making a turkey. He's not cooking but he might have something that has animal product in it. He will not refer to it as, well, here's some pork or here's some chicken. He'll say, well, here's the pig meat. He
calls it what it is. Yeah.
Call it what it is, and I think that some people just smile and go along with it, but other people have become educated about it, and it was responsible for educating me about dairy. I didn't really know much about dairy, and I kept kind of blowing it off and thinking, well, it's just, at least these cows are fine. They're eating grass and they're they're milked, and and then I learned more. And so dairy became less and less in my diet until now I'm down to I will eat goat cheese because I do know the goats, and I do they're pets, and then we milk them and we make some goat cheese. But no more milk for me. It's just not. It's okay. But I think you have to pick and choose your battle. When people come up to you or me or anyone else and try to argue the point of, well, why the dog meat trade, or why are you rescuing from there instead of from your local shelter? My answer typically is I have rescued from my local shelters, and I'm also rescuing from China. And I also know about the factory farming and how awful it is, but I can't cover every single thing. I'm only one person. So you pick what your passion really pulls you to, and you work on it.
Absolutely. I mean, why have to choose? Like, if you have the means to do both, like, why not, And I'm like you. I think all animals need our voice. I mean, if you're so focused on farm animals as opposed to dog meat trade, I mean, doesn't that make you a little bit specious, in my opinion? It's like, why favor one animal over another? They all need our help. They all need our support. And my heart's big enough to help all of them, Like, if there's something I can do for any animal, I will do it. I'm not picking and choosing which cause I'm going to support. They all need our help. Absolutely.
That's true. That's very true. Yeah.
And I think we need to stop like segregating ourselves into this camp. I'm the vegan camp. I'm the dog cat meat trade activist. And, animals don't have time for that. It's nonsense. At the end of the day, take your ego out of it and just help animals,
That's a very, very important message. Yeah.
I'm glad we see eye to eye on that. It's good to know there are other people that think like us. But something I often ask my guests at the end is if you would have any guest suggestions for me, because I started this podcast last year, and the whole idea why I started it is because there was nothing like it. I was looking for information. I felt like I was not getting the answers I was looking for on the internet. I mean, you can find information here and there, but to really understand the cause, the issue, and it varies per country. I think you probably know, like South Korea's dog meat farms, it's more industrial farming at that point. Whereas China's stolen pets and strays, it's more unregulated. Well, it's definitely unregulated. And I was looking for information, and so one great way for me to learn about any topic is listening to podcasts. And I'm a yoga enthusiast, and I listen to yoga podcasts, and I was like, there must be something on the dog captain trade. And I looked and looked and looked, and I couldn't find anything. So I said, well, I took it upon myself to start it.
That's amazing.
Well, thank you. And I've learned so much. I'm glad I did it. It's a great tool of discovery and education. And so I guess the podcast is really focused on the dog cat meat trade, because that's my number one cause, if you will. So would you have any suggestions as to a guest? Like, it could be a nonprofit that I haven't had on my podcast yet, or an activist that you're aware of, or a volunteer, or just like an adopter, an adopter of a survivor.
Well, I've seen some of your podcasts, not all of them.
Yeah.
I was very happy to watch one with No Dogs Left Behind. Jeff and Tina were on at one point. And then I saw Jill from Animals Asia, Jill Robinson, yes, who is one of my heroes. So I was really thrilled to watch her and listen to her story and what they're doing. The bear bile industry is just as horrific as I know that you did have John from Soy Dog at one point on your podcast.
Yes,
but I would always be happy to see him again. I think that he's a pretty amazing soul. I do think that there is one group that I'm very curious about. I don't know much about them, but I saw a video that they had posted recently, and it was, I think they're called Plush Bear or Plush.
I did approach Plush Bear, and that's a good one, because I know personally I've been messaged by people saying, we want to hear more about local Chinese groups, like local activists. And I have invited Plush Bear. Unfortunately, obviously, it's not directly her. It's a group of I guess, activists, if you will, that speak English, that support her. I mean, there's two of them in the UK. It's like a brother and sister. And there's Namali. Namali is an activist. She's in the States. She also supports Plush Bear. You can see these people on the website of Plush Bear Shelter. But unfortunately, a lot of them said they are afraid. And the same thing happened with Duo Project, which is another organization that's doing wonderful work. It's headed by Andrea Gong. She was interviewed many times, but they are fearful speaking to foreigners, because they are in China, and China is a communist regime, and they have that fear. Although I'm not sure how much that has value, because I think no one in China would watch the podcast. In my mind, I feel like the chances are very slim. But that was part of it, and the other part of it is just I guess some organizations are not as comfortable about, speaking on a podcast like this. I guess they felt the title and some of the promotional videos I did were a little too pointing the finger at China, like they're the problem, and a little bit prejudiced in that sense. I find that unfortunate, because I would love to have them on the show. And the other groups, the problem is the language barrier. There's no one there that could really do a good enough job at translating. And so I'm working on it. And next year I have quite a nice few guests lined up. So I'm excited.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we're going to have Peter J. Lee, who's an amazing advocate for the cause.
I did speak with him a couple of times.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah.
I know. I remember that you had asked me about him, and he's so genuine, so humble.
Yeah, he was so gracious, and we had even talked about collaborating together on writing an article. So that may or may not take place, but things have gotten in the way with all the drama in the States lately with a number of issues.
Yes.
But hopefully yeah, if not, then, well, too bad. But I just think that the more opportunities to get the word out, to get
Yeah,
publications, whether it's online or on paper,
yeah.
television or, some sort of television coverage, podcasts, all through social
The more
media.
the better. Like the more
Yes,
exposure, the better. Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Laura. You've been amazing, so generous with your time and to share this beautiful story. And right in time for Christmas, Jasper is going to celebrate his first Christmas here
He's
with
our
you.
Christmas gift this year. Yeah.
Yeah. He's got some gifts. Is that what you said?
No, he is our Chris this year. He's
Oh,
my
yes, absolutely.
he doesn't know he's waiting on a few gifts that have been ordered for him. I
Oh.
a little special collar and just some foo things. But
Oh my God.
it's
Did
fun.
did did you order him a coat? Because I love I love seeing little jackets on especially cats. I have a dream of putting my cats in a Christmas sweater. I don't
I,
know if it's ever gonna
yeah, I
happen.
don't think that's going to fly very well.
I know my cats are not gonna go for it, but maybe if I like get the treats out and coax them the right way, maybe I'll get that. But
I think it'll be entertaining.
it should be entertaining. If I manage, I'll send the picture. I'll put it on Facebook. A family portrait for Christmas.
Absolutely. I'll look forward to that.
Oh, well, thank you. And is Jasper still next to you?
He's sleeping on a
Oh,
jacket he found and pulled out of the closet. So,
oh
do
my
you want me?
God.
I can
Are
grab
you?
him.
No, I don't want you to disturb him, but maybe you could take your phone and just show us a view of him to say goodbye. Are you able to grab
Let's
your
see.
phone?
Let's see if we can do this.
I think you can.
Where are you, Jasper? No, it's not going to work.
Oh, there you go. I see him. Oh, hey Jasper. We love you. So glad you're home for the holiday. Right on time. And you're gonna
Say,
have a
I don't know
wonderful
my
Christmas.
name, but we're learning.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity, and I hope that more people will start to consider the entire issue, and whether or not they can adopt would be, they
Yeah,
could at least consider it and maybe donate or just become a member of an organization so they become more informed and can spread the word. I think it's really important.
absolutely. And we're all part of the solution. We all need to get involved and do our part. And no matter what part you play, it's all part of the solution. And so we got to band
Yeah,
together for the sake of these
yeah,
dogs.
yes, for sure.
Thank you, Laura. I wish you a wonderful Christmas and
Have a great holiday. Be
definitely,
safe and enjoy your cats. Get a
yes,
sweater. Get one of them a sweater.
I will. I will actually go through with that and hopefully cross my fingers it'll work.
Okay. All
Happy
right. Thank
holidays, Laura. Take care.
you.
Bye.
Bye.